Hello and welcome back to Dukascopy TV. I'm Natalie MacDonald. Now joining me back in the studio to revisit the Bali Ministerial Conference, I'm joined by Erwan Berthelot of White & Case. Erwan, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you very much, Natalie.
Now, you came in and spoke with us 2 weeks ago regarding the Bali Ministerial Conference. And despite a lot of uncertainty, in fact, we sort of forecasted that it wasn't really going to work out, there has in fact been a successful conclusion with the adoption of a new set of agreed measures. What are the implications of this success for the world trading system in your view?
Well, yes, indeed, it is a success. But first and foremost, I think it must be stressed that it is a political achievement. It was crucial for the WTO as an institution, as a system, to get this deal done. And that is perhaps even more important than the substance of the deal itself. You must remember that WTO members had been negotiating in the context of the Doha round for 12 years without delivering any meaningful or concrete results. So this is a very positive signal to the world community that the WTO is still able to deliver its function as a negotiating body. A lot of credit must be given to the new Director General, Roberto Azevedo, for this, because he has not spared efforts in dealing with members and pushing them towards this successful outcome. But as I said, we must look first and foremost at the Bali deal as a major political success, perhaps more than something extremely significant on the substance of the deal.
At the centre of this Bali agreement package, we can call it, is a much discussed new agreement on trade facilitation. What will the concrete benefits of this be for business operators?
Well, that is clearly the centerpiece of the Bali package, and certainly one of the most welcome achievements. It is, in the true sense, the first and most prominent multilateral trade agreement agreed upon since the conception of the WTO. So that is also an achievement by itself. What is trade facilitation about? It's primarily about cutting through red tape at borders and reducing or suppressing inefficiencies in import and export transactions. It is estimated that about 7% of the world trade value is lost in such inefficiencies dealing with border proceedings, and that the TFA, as we call it, the Trade Facilitation Agreement, will bring about $1 trillion in a global benefit. So this is big, this is important, this has been very much supported and welcomed by business operators, and they're truly delighted that there is such a deal. Now, the agreement itself is rather technical, very detailed. It covers a broad range of issues such as transparency, predictability of customs procedures, the issuance of advance ruling to exporters and importers, confirming the presence of the freedom of transit and facilitating trade of goods in transit, the whole set of items which will still need to be implemented by members. In this regard, it will not produce its effects immediately, but rather now WTO members will engage in an approval or ratification process, if you like, which should be completed by 31st of July 2015. In addition to this, there is some novelty elements in the way this agreement will be implemented, because it foresees a lot of flexibility for the most vulnerable economies, the developing countries, the least developed countries in particular, to the extent that they have some flexibility to decide at which pace they're going to implement these provisions. So for business operators, sellers, traders, it's going to be very important to look at which countries they do business and to monitor closely the extent to which these obligations are implemented by which countries, because it's going to be a different story doing business with Canada than doing business with Sub-Saharan Africa when it comes to benefiting from the provisions of the new agreement.
So can you walk us through then some of the other elements that have been included within this package then?
Right, yeah. The trade facilitation package is clearly the centerpiece, but there are also a lot of ministerial declarations which have been adopted, dealing primarily with two other sets of issues: agriculture on the one hand, and also development issues in favor primarily again of least developed economies. The development sub-package, if I may say, focuses on development and least developed economies. It encourages members, for example, to give duty-free access, quota-free access to all goods imported from least developed countries. And it also foresees for the implementation of these provisions specific preferential rules of origin for least developed countries. The duty-free, quota-free aspect mirrors an initiative that some developed WTO members had already begun to implement. For instance, the European Union had such an initiative in 2001 called Everything But Arms, under which all imports from these developed countries were already given duty-free, quota-free access to the EU market, except for weapons and armament, for instance. And on agriculture, I think it's worth stressing the particular decision reached on the public stockholding of agricultural products for food security purposes. This had led to very intense decisions. What is this about? Primarily the right of developed economies to procure foods from their producers for food security purposes, which in a number of situations means purchasing at guaranteed prices. Now, developing country members, especially India, were very keen in keeping the flexibility of implementing such programs without being challenged via the WTO dispute settlement systems. And they wanted a permanent peace clause for such programs. And this has created a lot of frictions because for other WTO members, granting such a peace clause on a permanent basis was out of questions. So what emerged out of Bali is a compromise solution under which the members are expected to come up with a final solution in 4 years' time at another WTO Ministerial conference. So it is only a 4 years peace clause for the moment, during which members will refrain from challenging their food security programs.
So this measure, although there has been agreement, there seems to have been sort of disagreements on various smaller clauses. But what is the next step then really for the WTO and its members?
Another positive thing which has emerged out of Bali is that the members now have been given a roadmap. And they have instructed the WTO and more specifically the Trade Negotiating Committee, which is the body dealing with the technical aspects and the substance of the negotiation, to come up with a working program within the next 12 months. So this has given political impetus towards the continuation of the Doha round negotiation. But there are a large number of items on the Doha agenda which are still pending, including agriculture, agricultural subsidies, market access for industrial products. That means, for instance, negotiating tariff reduction or suppression. All of this is still very contentious, and it's very uncertain whether, despite the positive momentum after Bali, success can be secured on all the remaining items. What I could foresee and what one could probably hope for is that rather than holding to the package approach, which has been the Doha philosophy, i.e. agreeing and negotiating everything at once, members continue to take a more pragmatic approach, such as the one followed for Bali, and negotiate smaller but concrete pieces and agreements on selective topics. There is already such a trend at work in the context of the WTO, although not at multilateral level, but rather plurilateral, where certain members have started to negotiate selected issues like trade in services or the International Technology Agreement, for instance, on high technology products. And these parallel negotiations could deliver also concrete results and perhaps serve as a model for a future multilateral agreement on the same topics. So I would personally be tempted to vote for such a pragmatic approach rather than sticking to the original one. It has, in my opinion, much more potential to deliver a successful outcome.
Aaron, thank you so much for coming back in and updating us on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie.
That's all we've got time for right now, but the Dukascopy TV team will be back with all of the latest in FX news and plenty more exclusive interviews for you. Goodbye for now.